Prologue. I was reborn. Back at 20, before everything went sideways. That girl, the undisputed queen of campus who became my wife and ran my life. This time around, I was going to stay a million miles away from her. All I wanted was to coast, to finally enjoy my life. But when I asked a cute freshman out, ready to finally start fresh, she showed up out of nowhere, looking like she caught me in the middle of an affair. The problem is, in this life, we haven't even met yet. Chapter 1. I died. Then I was alive again. The first thing I registered wasn't the sterile smell of a hospital, but the scent of sunlight on fresh-cut grass, mixed with, the rank odor of my cheap roommate's unwashed socks. I shot up in bed. My eyes landed on the familiar, peeling paint of the top bunk in my old college dorm room, the graffiti-covered walls, and the clunky old desktop monitor on my desk that should have been recycled years ago. On the screen was the login page for League of Legends, the game that had consumed my life back then. But wasn't I just in an ambulance, dying from a bleeding ulcer after a brutal dinner meeting, trying to lock down the next quarterly earnings report with a bunch of corporate sharks? With a trembling hand, I fumbled under my pillow and pulled out an old Nokia brick phone. The screen displayed it clearly, September 25th, 2014. My brain went into overdrive, then flatlined. Blank. I was reborn. I was back in my sophomore year of college. I was 20 years old again. A tidal wave of pure, unadulterated joy crashed over me. No more schmoozing with clients who smiled while they stabbed you in the back. No more deciphering spreadsheets that made my hair fall out. And most importantly, no more her, Saraphina Vance. My ex-wife, the woman whose name was etched into my soul, a woman I had loved, hated, and been terrified of for my entire adult life. In my last life, we were classmates. She was the girl, the one everyone orbited around, while I was just some guy. God only knows what she saw in me. But starting junior year, she pursued me relentlessly. I didn't stand a chance. And that began a decade plus of being cared for from every possible angle, with no blind spots. I had to be up at 7 a.m. sharp because, she said, morning jogs were good for my health. I had to be in bed by 11 p.m. because, she said, staying up late would destroy my liver. The greasy food trucks I loved? Unsanitary. The ice-cold Coke I craved? Bad for my teeth. My one hobby, playing a few rounds of video games? A complete waste of time. She was like a flawless piece of code, mapping out every single inch of my life's trajectory. I'll admit, under her management, I became successful. I was the guy everyone else envied, a bona fide professional. But I was so tired. I didn't feel like a person. I felt like a work of art in her private collection, something to be meticulously polished and maintained. My last thought before I died was, well, at least now no one can tell me when to go to bed. And now I was back to a time before we'd even officially met. In this life, I have only one goal: stay the hell away from Saraphina Vance. I'm going to coast. I'm going to eat from every food truck I was never allowed to, drink all the Coke I can handle, and pull all-nighters to finally beat all the games I never finished. I vaulted out of bed and paced my room excitedly. My roommate, Dave, stirred in his bunk. "Leo, what the hell are you doing?" he mumbled. "It's the crack of dawn, man. Go back to sleep." A massive grin split my face. I slapped his shoulder. "Sleep? Who needs sleep? It's time to live." Being reborn was awesome. The first thing I did was sprint to the campus ATM. I shoved my debit card in and almost cried when I saw the 4-figure balance. It was the tuition and living expense money my parents had sent me. Last time, I'd spent 3 months eating nothing but ramen and saltines just to buy Saraphina a limited edition handbag she'd mentioned offhandedly. To hell with the handbag. I was getting a steak. I made a beeline for the strip of food trucks just off campus, a place Saraphina had designated a no-go zone. Greasy kebab skewers, sizzling steak sandwiches, loaded chili fries, crispy fried chicken. I ate my way from one end of the street to the other, a lamb skewer in my left hand and an ice-cold lemonade in my right, grease dripping down my chin. The sun was warm, a light breeze was blowing. No frantic calls from the office. No packed schedule. And most importantly, no voice in my ear telling me how unhealthy this all was. Freedom. It was the most beautiful thing in the world. If I could do it all over again, I would choose to never meet you. I'd screamed that at her during our worst fight. Now, fate had given me the chance. Saraphina Vance, in this life, let's be strangers. Chapter 2 for the next month. I lived like a dog let off its leash. I skipped classes, slept in, and played League of Legends until the sun came up. My biggest daily dilemma was whether to suffer through the dining hall's mystery meatloaf or hit up the new ramen place downtown. To fully embrace my new philosophy of coasting, I even used my future knowledge for the most trivial things. For instance, I knew the GameStop near campus would have a buy two, get one free sale on used games next month, so I traded in all my old stuff in advance to max out my credit. I knew the dorm supervisor's cat would get lost, so I strategically left a trail of tuna leading back to her office, earning me a permanent spot on her good side, a solid foundation for all my future late-night returns. My life's motto was simple: whatever's easiest. Of course, coasting still requires a healthy body. So I started hitting the gym, no excuses. In my past life, Saraphina had forced me to work out, and I treated it like torture. But this time, going on my own terms, it felt completely different. I reveled in the burn of torn muscle fibers, watching in the mirror as a six-pack slowly emerged. I was reclaiming my own body. The abs, the V-line, all the things Saraphina used to inspect as if it were homework were now mine, and mine alone. I even started a new hobby, home brewing. I set up a clumsy apparatus on our dorm room balcony and started making a batch of hard cider. The sweet, fermented scent of apples was the smell of a life well lived. Occasionally, I'd see Saraphina on campus from a distance. She was still the center of the universe. Everywhere she went, a crowd of people followed, like she was a celebrity with her entourage. And I was just another face in the crowd. Every time I saw her, I'd instinctively duck away, like a mouse seeing a cat. I was terrified of that damn magnetic pull between us, terrified she'd notice me again, terrified that my fragile bubble of freedom would pop with a single touch. My avoidance strategy was a smashing success. A month passed, and we were like two parallel lines, never crossing. I started to think I might have overreacted. Maybe in this life, without all those engineered coincidences, she'd never even know I existed. The thought allowed me to finally, truly relax. Coasting was comfortable, but after a while, a little boring, especially on a college campus teeming with hormones. Seeing couples holding hands everywhere, my heart, which had been dormant for over a decade, started to stir. I needed a relationship, a sweet, simple one. No control, no pressure, just pure, uncomplicated fun. Soon enough, a target appeared. Chloe Miller, a freshman in the communications program. She was cute, with a voice as sweet as honey. I was in the library one afternoon. Yes, I occasionally pretended to be a serious student to cultivate my character, and she sat down across from me. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching on her long eyelashes and creating a perfect halo effect. She was so focused on her textbook, occasionally nibbling on her lower lip without realizing it. In that instant, I could practically hear my own heart thumping. This was it. This was the kind of simple, beautiful feeling I'd been missing. Relying on the confidence of a man who had lived two lives, it didn't take long for me to strike up a conversation. "Wow, that book looks fascinating. Mind if I take a look?" I said, pointing to her copy of The Fundamentals of Broadcast Journalism. Chloe blinked, then let out a little laugh. She had two shallow dimples when she smiled. It was adorable. "Are you serious, senior?" "Absolutely," I said deadpan. "Art is universal. I'm trying to elevate my own artistic sensibilities." It went smoothly from there. We exchanged numbers and went from talking about art to movies, music, and food. I found out we had a lot in common. She loved spicy food and was a huge fan of classic horror films. Talking to her was completely relaxing. I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. This Friday, I asked her to go see a movie. She said yes. After hanging up, I stood on the balcony, a cool breeze on my face, feeling giddy. I, Leo Carter, was finally starting my new life. Goodbye, Saraphina Vance. Hello, Chloe Miller. My future was looking bright. Chapter 3 on Friday afternoon, I got a haircut and put on what I considered my best outfit. A clean white t-shirt, light wash jeans, and a pair of spotless Chucks. Youthful, sunny, the perfect college kid vibe. I checked myself out in the mirror, pleased. This is what a 20-year-old is supposed to look like. In my last life, at this very moment, I'd have been wearing one of the dark dress shirts and slacks Saraphina bought me, because she said it made a good impression on professors. To hell with good impressions. The only impression I cared about was the one I was about to make on a freshman. Chloe and I agreed to meet at the main campus gate. I got there half an hour early. To show I was thoughtful, I stopped at a boba tea place to grab us some drinks. One mango passion fruit tea for her, full sugar with extra ice, just how she liked it. For the second cup, I reflexively started to order, and one half sweet, no ice. The words died on my lips. I froze. Half sweet, no ice. That was Saraphina's order. She had a sensitive stomach and couldn't handle anything too cold, and she was always worried about calories. That preference was burned into my brain like a brand. I laughed at myself, a bitter little chuckle. Actually, I told the barista, make that two of the same. Full sugar, extra ice. Starting today, I was exorcising every last habit connected to Saraphina Vance. I leaned against the sycamore tree by the gate, scrolling on my phone while I waited for Chloe, holding the two sweating cups of boba. I felt a sense of light-hearted anticipation I hadn't felt in years. I even started rehearsing my opening line. Should I tell her she looked pretty? Or should I casually brush a fallen leaf from her hair? As I was lost in my own fantasy, the ambient noise around me seemed to die down. The guys walking past all slowed their pace, their eyes locked on a single point. I looked up curious. One glance, and my blood turned to ice. A short distance away, a girl in a simple white sundress was walking slowly, purposefully, toward me. Her long, dark hair flowed down her back. She wore no makeup, yet she outshone every other girl in the quad. That face, I knew it too well. I'd know it if it were Ash. Saraphina Vance. What was she doing here? Why was she walking toward me? My brain crashed. A million questions spun in my head. A coincidence? It had to be a coincidence. There was no way she was here for me. We didn't know each other in this life. I immediately looked down at my phone, pretending to be engrossed, chanting a silent mantra. She can't see me, she can't see me. But that familiar, faint scent of jasmine was getting closer. A pair of white canvas sneakers stopped right in front of me. I could feel a burning gaze fixed on the top of my head. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cold sweat trickled down my spine. Run. That was the only word in my head. I forced myself to look up, plastering a smile on my face that felt more like a grimace. I was about to say, "Excuse me, you're my way," but I was met by a pair of eyes so clear and deep they felt like pools of water. Her eyes were beautiful. In my last life, I had drowned in them. Right now, those pools were swirling with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Time seemed to stop. The campus noise faded away. In my world, there was only her and the two cups of rapidly melting boba tea in my hands. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was cool, with a subtle, almost imperceptible rasp. "Leo Carter. Where you going?" Boom. My brain exploded. Chapter for she knew my name. She actually knew my name. The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was frozen solid, nearly dropping the drinks. How was that possible? In this life, we were supposed to be strangers. I was actively avoiding her. How could she possibly know my name? Did my rebirth trigger some kind of butterfly effect? Or worse, had I been under her surveillance this entire time? The thought made the hair on my arms stand up. I think you have me mistaken for someone else. I managed to choke out, my voice raspy and unfamiliar. I tried to make my expression as innocent and confused as possible. Saraphina watched my pathetic acting without a word. A small smile played on her lips, the exact same smile she'd had in our last life whenever she caught me hiding cash from her. It was a look of playful amusement, mixed with an unnerving, all-knowing confidence. My heart sank. She took a step closer, closing the distance between us. I could see the fine, nearly invisible hairs on her cheeks. Her gaze drifted from my panicked face down to the two boba teas in my hand. "For me?" she asked, knowing full well they weren't. "No, they're—" I started, instinctively trying to hide them behind my back. But her next words sent me plunging into an icy abyss. She pointed a slender finger at one of the cups, her tone as casual as if we'd known each other forever. "Half sweet, no ice." "Thanks, honey." Honey. The word struck me like a sledgehammer. My breath hitched in my chest. She didn't just know my name. She knew I was here waiting for someone. She even knew the damn drink I had almost ordered out of habit. This world had gone completely insane. I stared at her, my mouth hanging open, but no words came out. My brain couldn't process the bizarre scene unfolding in front of me. Just then, a bright, cheerful voice called out from behind me. "Now, I'm here." It was Chloe. I spun around to see her jogging toward me, a wide, sunny smile on her face. "I'm dead. It's over. I'm so dead." I felt like a husband caught cheating, even though I was more wrongfully accused than a character in a Greek tragedy. Chloe reached us, her curious gaze flicking from Saraphina to me and back again. "Hey, who's this? How was I supposed to explain this? Tell her this was a classmate I'd never met? But she just called me honey. Tell her this was a friend? I wouldn't even believe that lie myself." I stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Just as I was breaking out in a full-blown sweat, Saraphina made her move. She casually, naturally, looped her arm through mine. The touch was light, but to me, it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I went completely rigid. Then I heard her say to Chloe, in a voice as sweet as poison, "Hi there. I'm Leo's keeper." She smiled, a picture of warmth and innocence. But in my eyes, she had just sprouted 2 little horns and a pointy black tail. The smile on Chloe's face froze. She looked at Saraphina, then at me, her eyes filled with confusion. "Keeper? What do you mean?" Seraphina's smile widened. She rested her head lightly on my shoulder in a gesture of pure intimacy. "It's exactly what it sounds like," she purred. "He's my responsibility." As she spoke, she glanced pointedly at the boba in my hand. "See? He can't even decide what to drink without my input." I was speechless. I felt like I was the star of some surreal dark comedy. And I was the punchline. Chapter 5, Chloe's expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization, and finally, to awkward disappointment. She was a smart girl. Seraphina's words were vague, but her body language and tone screamed one thing: possession. "Oh, well, you two talk. I just remembered I have something to do, so I'm gonna go," Chloe said, forcing a smile. She turned and practically ran, her posture screaming of a hasty retreat. My mouth opened. I wanted to call after her, to explain. But what could I possibly explain? I didn't even understand what was happening myself. I watched until Chloe's figure disappeared into the crowd. A date I had been looking forward to for weeks, destroyed in an instant. And the culprit was still attached to my arm, looking completely innocent. I ripped my arm out of her grasp like I'd been burned. "Saraphina, what the hell do you think you're doing?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. She didn't get angry. She just rubbed her wrist, looking at me with wide, wounded eyes. "You hurt me." That pitiful act would have worked on anyone else. Anyone else would have thought I was the villain. But I knew better. This was her specialty, using that angelic face to get away with devilish deeds. "Look," I said, taking a deep breath and trying to sever this once and for all. "I'll say it one more time. You have the wrong person. I don't know you. Please stay away from me." I turned to leave. I couldn't stand to be near her for another second. "Now," her voice, soft and low, stopped me in my tracks. I paused, but didn't turn around. "You hit chest day at the gym yesterday. You had the sausage, gravy, and biscuits from the second-floor dining hall for breakfast. And you skipped your intro to philosophy lecture." Her voice was quiet, but every word felt like a nail being hammered into my back. I whipped around, staring at her in disbelief. My scalp prickled. If she just knew my name, maybe she'd heard it somewhere. But these were details only I would know. How could she possibly know all that? Did she have a tracker on me? Was she having me followed 24/7? The thought that my entire month of so-called freedom had been lived inside a fishbowl, with her watching my every move, was utterly terrifying. Who are you?" My voice was trembling. "I'm Saraphina Vance," she said, blinking innocently. "We go to the same university. Don't you remember?" How could I forget? The fact that I remembered everything so clearly was why I was so scared. "Are you investigating me?" I stared at her, searching her face for any crack in her facade. "Investigating you?" She let out a small laugh, as if I'd said something hilarious. "Do I need to?" Her smile held a certainty. And something else I couldn't place, was it sadness? I had to be seeing things. Sadness wasn't an emotion in her repertoire. "Saraphina, I don't care how you found this stuff out. I'm warning you. Leave me alone. I'm not interested in you, and I never will be." I threw my harshest words at her. I expected her pride to kick in, for her to turn and leave in a huff. In our last life, The slightest harsh word from me could send her into a silent treatment that lasted for days. But she just watched me, her gaze steady. There was no anger, no disappointment, just a deep, unreadable calm. After a long moment, she said softly, "When you lie, Leo, the pinky on your left hand curls in." I instinctively glanced down. My left hand was clenched into a tight fist, my pinky finger digging deep into my palm. My heart and my stomach dropped to the floor. Chapter 6, I was spiraling. This version of Saraphina was all wrong. She knew me inside and out, better, it seemed, than I knew myself. It felt like I was standing naked under a high-powered microscope, every thought and pretense exposed. No, I couldn't let her control the situation. I had to figure this out. A crazy idea began to form in my mind. I had to test her. "Fine," I said, taking a deep breath to calm my racing heart. "So we know each other. Then you must remember the first time we met. It was in the library. You were wearing a beautiful red dress." It was a carefully constructed lie. In our past life, the first time we'd officially met was during freshman orientation. The hall was packed, and I got shoved, accidentally knocking over her suitcase and breaking one of the wheels. As for the red dress, that was complete nonsense. Saraphina's wardrobe consisted of black, white, gray, and a few light pastels. She'd once told me she found the color red tacky. I stared at her, watching for the slightest flicker of emotion. If she was just some stalker who had done her research, there was no way she could know the details of her shared history. She might play along, or say she didn't remember. Either way, it would prove nothing. But her reaction was something I never could have predicted. When she heard my words, she stared at me for a second, then burst out laughing. It wasn't a small giggle. It was a genuine, unrestrained laugh. It was sharp and tinged with mockery. "Leo, you've always been a terrible liar." She shook her head as she laughed, tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. "That's complete garbage. The first time we met was at freshman orientation. You clumsy idiot, crashed right into my brand new suitcase and broke a wheel. I had to drag that three-legged piece of junk all the way across campus." She paused, shooting me a look. "And for the record, I never wear red. It's tacky. Don't you remember that one Christmas you insisted on getting me a red scarf? It's still balled up in the back of a closet somewhere. I never wore it. Not once." My mind went blank. Everything she said, every single word was correct. Perfectly, frighteningly accurate. The broken suitcase, the rejected red scarf. These were details from our last life, things I had buried deep in my memory. Only one other person in the world could have known that. The Saraphina from my past life. A theory so absurd it made my skin crawl began to wrap its thorny vines around my heart. I looked at her face, so young, yet so familiar, and my lips began to tremble. I couldn't form a complete sentence. It was her, and it wasn't. She was the 20-year-old Saraphina, but she seemed to hold all the memories of the 30-something Saraphina who had lived our entire life with me. How was that possible? Unless she too had been. Chapter 7, I stood there, rooted to the spot, the world spinning around me. Rebirth happening to me was unbelievable enough. But if she was reborn too, then what was the point? My plan to coast, my month of blissful freedom, was it all just a joke? I stared at her, and she stared back at me. In the space between us, time seemed to stretch to infinity. The playful, mocking glint in her eyes was gone. Now, that beautiful gaze swirled with emotions I knew all too well, yet had never seen on this young face. Helplessness, heartache, regret, and a fragile, cautious hope. My heart clenched. I'd only ever seen that look on her once before, in our last life, the moment she signed the divorce papers. I didn't understand it then. All I felt was relief. Freedom. Now I think I was starting to. "Leo," she said again, her voice soft and gentle. "Do you really think I was so controlling? That I made you that miserable?" My throat felt like it was full of sand. I couldn't speak. She took another step closer. "Do you really think your life would be happier without me in it?" I had no answer, because what she said was exactly what I believed. My entire reason for this new life was to escape her. Seeing my silence, the light in her eyes seemed to dim for a fraction of a second. But just as quickly, it was back, replaced by that infuriating, captivating smile, a mix of bossiness and cunning charm. "Honey," she said, the pet name now sounding soft and sticky like warm caramel. clinging to my heart. I flinched, nearly losing my balance. She seemed to enjoy my flustered reaction, her smile growing. Last time, I went about it all wrong, she whispered, her voice so low that only I could hear. I thought that if I cleared every obstacle from your path, if I paved the smoothest road for you, that I was doing what was best. I thought if you were successful, we would be happy. But I forgot to ask if that was what you wanted. Her words unlocked a floodgate of memories. I remember the time I drank myself into a bleeding ulcer for a client, and she sat by my hospital bed, crying like a child while simultaneously yelling at me for not taking care of myself. I remembered when my first startup failed, leaving me in a mountain of debt. Everyone else left. She was the only one who stayed, silently selling the condo her parents had bought for her to pay off my loans, then telling me, "It's okay. I'll support you." I remembered. What I had always seen as control was in her mind love. A clumsy, forceful, suffocating kind of love. "So," she said, looking up at me, her eyes shining like stars. "This time, how about I try a different way?" Chapter 8. My brain had officially shut down. All my plans, all my preparations, were utterly meaningless in the face of one simple fact. She was reborn, too. I thought I was the one who had the script to this life. Turns out, I was just an NPC who thought he was the main character. The final boss was, and always had been, her. What could I say? What could I do? Run? Where would I run? The fact was, I couldn't escape her in the last life. This time, seeing how prepared she was, I didn't stand a ghost of a chance. I stared at her for a long time before I managed to squeeze out a single question. When did you know? Know what? She teased. That you asked another girl on a date? Or that you were trying to avoid me? I've known since the first day you woke up, she finally admitted, a note of triumph in her voice. You forgot, didn't you? The first thing you did was run out onto the balcony and scream, "I'm finally free." I heard you loud and clear from the dorm across the quad. I've never felt so mortified in my entire existence. My grand, secret rebellion had been a live-stream clown show for her benefit. I could feel my face burning, a hot flush spreading from my cheeks to the tips of my ears. Seeing my embarrassment, Saraphina finally broke into a real, genuine laugh. It was like watching ice melt in the spring. In our last life, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her laugh like that. The older her was always frowning, serious, like a stern school principal. Okay, I'll stop teasing you." She stepped forward and reached out. But instead of grabbing my ear, like she would have in her past life, she gently straightened the collar of my shirt. Her fingertips were cool against my hot skin, sending a shiver through me. "Leo, I've missed you so much." Her voice was a whisper, laced with a vulnerability that trembled on the edge of tears. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. It ached. "Last time, we were both so tired," she said, looking up, her eyes glistening but her gaze firm. "This time, let's not talk about the future, or careers, or any of that heavy stuff. Let's just be Leo and Saraphina, okay? Let's just enjoy college. You want to eat at a food truck? I'll go with you. You want to pull an all-nighter gaming? I'll bring you a Coke. You want to coast? Then I'll coast right alongside you." My defenses in that single moment crumbled into dust. Looking at this girl, the same girl who was now promising to be my partner in crime, I suddenly realized how childish and ridiculous my whole coasting plan had been. I never wanted a life without her. I just wanted a life with a her who was with me, not managing me. "So, what about Chloe?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Seraphina's eyes went cold in an instant. The hand on my collar tightened its grip. "You still dare to bring her up?" "Nope, never mentioned her." I surrendered immediately. "Leo Carter, let me tell you something," she whispered, leaning in so her lips were right next to my ear. "This time, you are never, ever getting away from me. Those abs, that V-line, all of it, it's mine. And I'm making it official." With that, she stood on her toes and pressed her lips to mine. It was warm, soft, and tasted of jasmine. I was completely and utterly lost. To hell with coasting. With a wife this fierce and this captivating, who would ever want to? I wrapped my hand around the back of her head and deepened the kiss. Yep, tasted just like I remembered. Perfect.